What's going on, guys? BriarRabbit here. Yesterday I made a video about the Dualshock 4, specifically how I picked one up at GameStop and was able to do an unboxing video and an initial impressions just based on, playing with the controller in my hand but not actually hooking it up to anything, because I just naturally assumed that it wouldn't work with the PlayStation 3. Well, I assumed wrong. I was on the internet last night and I found a web post that I'll link down in the description of this video talking about all the games that you can use the DualShock 4 controller with on the PlayStation 3. So Call of Duty Black Ops 2 was one of those games, so right away I went upstairs, hooked the thing up, and started playing. So it hooks up differently than the PlayStation 3 controller. It uses a different style of cable. I believe that the DualShock 3 uses a micro USB, and the DualShock 4 uses a mini USB. So the controller unfortunately doesn't come with one of these cables. The documentation for the controller says that the PlayStation 4 will include that cable. But if you're going to have a few different controllers for your console, you're going to have to find some more of these cables. Luckily, I had one hanging around from one of my old cell phones, which was very lucky indeed. Unfortunately, it's only about 2 feet long, so I can't sit too far away from the PlayStation while I'm using it. But yeah, it worked great. It will only work as a wired controller. It will not work wirelessly. And when you plug it in, the little light bar on the front of the controller actually glows orange. I believe that's to indicate that it is charging, because it stayed orange the whole time I was playing last night, but when I woke up this morning it had turned off, and now only when I plug in the controller will it blink orange, and then it turns off again. So I think that's just to indicate that it has power and is charging, and once it is fully charged, that orange light turns off. But it was pretty cool to see. I liked having that little orange light on there. It is worth noting that this is only limited functionality. There are some features that just don't work on the PlayStation 3. Obviously, the touchpad doesn't work because there's no support on the PlayStation 3 for a touchpad. The PlayStation button between the two thumbsticks actually doesn't work. Obviously, the speaker doesn't work on the controller itself, which is not really surprising. The rumble doesn't work at all in the controller. That must work on a different system on the PlayStation 4 than it does on the PlayStation 3. Also, the 6-axis controls don't work, which, to be honest with you, it doesn't bother me because I don't use them in Black Ops 2. I don't really remember the last time I used them for any game. I think it might have been Uncharted, the first one. The share button on the DualShock 4 actually works as the select button on the DualShock 3, and the options button works as the start button. So you can navigate your menus. You can pretty much functionally get around the PlayStation 3, with the one caveat that you can't use that PlayStation button, so you can't bring up menus once you're in the game, that kind of thing. Overall, though, it worked pretty good. So let's talk about what did work and my impressions of it. So the thumbsticks. Let's talk about the thumbsticks right off the bat. They are weird feeling under your thumbs. I've just never had a controller that has that same shape to it for the covers of the thumbsticks. However, I really like them. While my thumbs might take a little while to get used to having that shape under them, they were really precise, and my thumbs just did not slip off of these things. I think they're really well designed, and I'm pretty happy with them. This game might not be the most impressive game you've ever seen. It was a brand new controller, but I gotta say that it worked flawlessly. It was very precise. There was very little dead zone. It was very easy to navigate. And while my aim might have been off because the controller was brand new to me, I did not feel like that was a controller. It was just me learning the range of movement on the controller, because the range of movement is actually a little bit less than on the PlayStation 3. But I gotta tell you, I prefer it. The triggers come up next, and I really like these triggers. Compared to the DualShock 3, these are a vast improvement. They feel like triggers. They don't feel like just mushy buttons on the back of the controller anymore. Most players in Black Ops 2, actually on the PlayStation 3, will actually have a reverse setup for the bumpers and the triggers, because the triggers are just so bad for shooting. But with this controller, I was actually used the triggers as my trigger and the bumpers for grenades, which was something that I couldn't do with the DualShock 3. They just did not work as triggers well enough. The buttons, the face buttons, the triangle, square, X, and circle buttons, they feel good too. They're a little mushier than on the DualShock 3. The DualShock 3, they have just a little bit of click that really kind of lets you know you hit that button. there isn't that feeling of a click when you hit these ones on the DualShock 4, but they do feel good. The digital pad, you know, all I really use the digital pad for in Black Ops 2 is just selecting a kill streak, so it's hard to really tell you what exactly I felt about that. I probably have to play some game that really uses it heavily, like Street Fighter 2 or something, but it feels nice. You know, it feels like an improvement over the DualShock 3 design, so I'm hopeful that this is a much better design. The controller itself is a bit heavier than the DualShock 3, which surprised me a little bit. It's not super noticeable, and I have to tell you, since I had it connected to about a 2-foot cable connected to my PlayStation 3, that might have been causing some bit of fatigue, but I did notice that it felt a little heavier in hand. But again, that could go away once I actually have it as a wireless controller as opposed to a very shortly tethered wired controller. The textured back on the controller, I like quite a bit. It's not quite as good as something like the Scuff gaming grip on the back of a Scuff controller, but for a first-party controller, I really enjoy that. It feels like it's securely in your grip. You know, it's a pleasing feel when it's in your hand, and I like that quite a bit. The handles on the bottom of the controller are also much bigger than on a DualShock 3 and angled slightly differently, and I gotta say I like it better. It's easier for my thumbs to be on the thumbsticks. It's easier for my fingers to rest on the triggers. I think it's just a better shape overall, and it just feels more secure in my hand and more pleasing to my hand than the DualShock 3 ever did. Overall, I gotta say I'm pretty impressed with this controller. It feels like a very big improvement over the DualShock 3. I like how the thumbsticks are further apart from one another. It feels like it's much more suitable for first-person shooters. I'm also looking forward to see what companies like Scuff Gaming are going to do with this. Whether they'll have trigger stops and programmable buttons on the back, similar to what they do with the Xbox 360 controller. I'll be really interested to see what they do. I am pretty happy that I actually picked this up. I'm glad that it works with the PlayStation 3. I know my GameStop has them. I know a lot of other GameStops have them. I can't tell you if your GameStop's going to have it, but if they do, you might want to pick one up. It's kind of fun to have it and to play PlayStation 3 games with it. So that's going to do it for this video. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.